Today, we're diving into the absolutely dramatic rise and the catastrophic fall of Hitler's empire. It's an incredible story of how a nation managed to achieve total domination over a continent, only to lose it all in less than 3 years. To really get a sense of the scale we're talking about, let's just start with this one number, 250 million. At its absolute peak, that's how many people were living under Hitler's control. Now, to put that in perspective, that's more than double the entire population of Germany at the time. A staggering figure that just shows you how vast this empire truly was.
You know, we're actually going to start our story right here, at the very top, the absolute apex of Nazi power in late 1942. At this exact moment, the German war machine looked completely invincible. Its influence stretched across an entire continent. And I think to really understand the collapse, you first have to appreciate the incredible height from which it fell.
So, first up, let's take a look at this empire at its peak. I mean, the reach was just unbelievable, stretching all the way from the Atlantic Ocean to the Caucasus Mountains, right on the edge of Asia.
Now, you gotta understand, this empire wasn't just one single solid block. It was more like a patchwork. You had direct military occupation in places like France and Norway, of course. Then you had these huge colonial territories carved right out of the Soviet Union. And on top of that, a whole network of so-called allied states like Hungary and Romania, where Germany basically called all the shots. It was, in every sense of the word, a continental empire. So what on earth fueled this relentless, almost unstoppable drive for conquest? It wasn't just raw ambition. It was something much more specific, and frankly, a deeply disturbing ideology.
And that brings us to the heart of it all. This one single concept, Lebensraum. This idea is absolutely central if you want to understand both the motivation and the sheer brutality of the Third Reich.
Lebensraum, which literally means living space, was this vision of a massive German colonial empire in Eastern Europe. The whole plan was to seize all this land for German settlers, exploit all its resources, and turn Germany into a global superpower. But of course, this vision had a dark side. It required the complete removal of the millions of people who were already living there.
And this is where that ideology becomes absolutely chilling. The actual plan to achieve Lebensraum was called General Plan Ost. It was nothing short of a blueprint for ethnic cleansing on a scale the world had never seen. It literally called for the murder, the enslavement, and the forced removal of millions upon millions of Slavic people, all just to make way for German colonizers. It's a core part of the very same ideology that drove the Holocaust.
Okay, so that's the why, this concept of Lebensraum. But what about the how? I mean, how did Germany actually manage to conquer so much territory so incredibly fast? Well, the expansion really happened in two distinct phases. First, you had this period of diplomatic aggression, basically using the threat of war to annex neighbors like Austria and parts of Czechoslovakia without firing a shot. But that quickly, and I mean quickly, escalated into full-blown military conquest, unleashing the infamous Blitzkrieg, that tactic of lightning-fast, coordinated attacks designed to just completely overwhelm an enemy. The pace of it all was just breathtaking. In 1938, Austria was annexed. Just 1 year later, the invasion of Poland kicks off World War II. By 1940, bam, most of Western Europe had fallen. And then in 1941, Hitler launches the largest land invasion in human history against the Soviet Union. And all of that is what brought the empire to its absolute peak in 1942. But here's the thing about an empire built that fast, on such a brutal foundation, it proved impossible to sustain. The very speed of its rise actually set the stage for its incredibly rapid collapse. The tide was about to turn, and turn dramatically.
The term historians often use for this is imperial overstretch, and by October of 1942, the Third Reich had hit a breaking point. Its armies were fighting on multiple fronts, thousands of miles away from home. Its supply lines were stretched to their absolute limit. The empire was simply too big to control, too big to defend.
And the collapse? Well, it came from all sides. In the east, you had the catastrophic defeat at Stalingrad, which completely shattered the myth of German invincibility. Down south, the surrender in North Africa sealed off the empire's southern border. And then finally, the Allied invasions in Italy and France began this relentless squeeze from the west, pushing German forces all the way back to their own border.
The speed of the collapse is really just as shocking as the speed of the expansion. Think about it. At the end of 1942, the Reich is at its absolute peak. Just 2 years later, it's been forced all the way back to where it started in 1939, and by May of 1945,
It's all over, from continental domination to total surrender in less than 3 years.
And this, right here, brings us to the core irony of the Third Reich. The very ideology of Lebensraum that fueled its relentless expansion, with all of its boundless ambition and its inherent brutality, it created an empire so huge and so unstable that it literally contained the seeds of its own destruction from the very beginning. The drive to conquer everything made it pretty much inevitable that, in the end, they would lose it all.